On March 30, 1867, the United States of America bought more than 1.5 million square kilometers of land from the Russian Empire at the northwestern extremity of the North American continent, which is now the state of Alaska, for an estimated amount of $7.2 million. If we adjust to inflation, it will be around $130 million in today's money. It's so insane to think that there are hundreds of houses across the US that are more expensive than the entire state of Alaska. For example, the one mentioned in Bel Air, California is around $300 million, twice the purchase price of Alaska. Alaska purchase cost US for just 2 cents per acre of land. But why did Russia sell Alaska? Was that the biggest mistake in Russia's history? Well, the answer is quite tricky, and it is arguably a genius move by the Russian Empire. Russia's total land area was not as large in the 16th century as it is today. Its eastern land expansion strategy contributed significantly to the country's acquisition of Alaska, which is a part of the North American continent. Also, Alaska had a lethal climate back then. To withstand minus 50 degrees Celsius cold weather in winter was much harder than it is today. Russia established a presence in the North America, but very few Russian settlers actually moved to live there. Alaska deal has a unique backstory. Bulgaria, Romania, Moldova, and Crimea were among the Balkan countries that Russia intended to rule. In the 1850s, they were part of the Ottoman Empire. Because of the religiosity of the Russian Tsar, Russia was determined to protect the Christians in the Muslim-majority Ottoman Empire. Part of the conflict which broke out frequently between Russia and the Ottomans was that the Hagia Sophia Temple in Istanbul, which is now a mosque, is important in the Orthodox Christian Church, which Russia, Greece, and Eastern Europe are adherent to. Consequently, Russia invaded Romania in July 1853, following which the Ottomans declared war, and Britain and France supported Ottomans because they wanted to destroy Russian naval power in the Black Sea. The war, popularly known as the Crimean War, which lasted 3 years from 1853 to 1856, resulted in the defeat of Russia by the Ottoman alliance, including the UK and France. Following the Crimean battle, Russian Tsar Alexander II began considering selling Alaska, which would be hard to protect in the event of a potential war against Russia's biggest rival, the UK. Russia's decision to sell Alaska was based on this defeat in the Crimean War. Facing a loss of more than 12,000 troops and leaving with depleting coffers, Russia decided to sell its territory. It was the most humiliating defeat in Russia's history because it lost its huge influence in Europe and drained its treasury. Even today, Russia's biggest state propagandists on TV are very salty about their defeat in the Crimean War. Russian Empire didn't lose Crimea in the war, but recently annexing Crimea is like putting a band-aid to an old bleeding wound. So as Russian population centers and economy are located west of the Urals, the Treaty of Aigun gave Russia the Manchurian coastline and the ice-free port of Vladivostok in 1858. But it was already too late. The British are busy settling the Pacific Northwest and will soon challenge Russia for their meager North American holdings. The Russian fleet is mainly based in the Baltic Sea, tied down by Denmark, and can only emerge from their icy Baltic home into the North Sea, the backyard of the British Royal Navy. Russian North Sea fleet is at best a pipe dream. Their Black Sea fleet gone after the disastrous Crimean War, their Pacific fleet lacks shipyards and ports of any great use. In 1867, Russia thus had a choice: lose Alaska to the British sometime soon in a war they can't even hope to win, or see if they can lose it to someone else and gain some badly needed foreign currency in return. Understandably, they chose the second option to sell Alaska. If you can't keep it and defend it, best to sell it. That was the thinking of the Tsar. Exactly the same situation when France sold huge Louisiana territories to the US. The Louisiana Purchase was one of the history's greatest bargains, a chance for the US to buy what promised to be one of France's largest and wealthiest territories and eliminate a European threat in the process. For 80 million francs at the cost of fewer than 4 cents per acre, the US doubled its size, acquiring from France 875,000 square miles of territory that today comprises all or some of 13 states from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border. Sell it or lose it. That was Napoleon's problem, just as it was Russian Tsars. There were also two main reasons behind Napoleon's decision to sell Louisiana. He did not have the resources to control the area and had no desire to do so. He was surrounded by enemies who did everything to destroy him. It was better to get a few $1,000,000 than nothing. He knew that hanging on to it might later draw him into a conflict with the US, and that was something he wanted to avoid, and most importantly, by helping the US to continental greatness and enriching the French treasury in the process, Napoleon created a world power that was strong enough to challenge Britain. He said, "I have given England a maritime rival that sooner or later will humble her pride." His prophecy came true. Within a decade, the War of 1812 between the US and Britain drew off British forces that were still fighting in 1815 and which otherwise might have been present at the Battle of Waterloo, where Napoleon was fighting. And even now, the US Navy and the US military force heavily outweighed the British Navy and its armies. Another reason Napoleon agreed to sell was his decision to concentrate on his European empire, which he knew would mean future wars, and he wanted to invade Britain, so he would need money to wage those wars. In 1803, $15 million of the Louisiana trade was a tidy sum. Again, if you can't keep it and defend it, best to sell it. And if you have to sell it, best to sell it to the enemy of your enemy. Interestingly, the US and Russia were never rivals prior to the Cold War. They had a cozy relationship in most of history. Even in both world wars, they were close allies. In the 1800s, Russia and the US were allies due to their common antipathy and hatred towards the British Empire. This is one of the main reasons why Russia propositioned the US for the Alaska deal. In both cases, Russia and France maximized their respective outcome at the time, and there was no better alternative. The common hatred of French and Russians towards the British was so strong that it really did strengthen the US to the point that it is the most powerful country militarily and the #1 economy in the world in the 21st century. Thanks for watching. Thanks to all these Patreon supporters, your support means a lot. If you like this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. I try to do as concisely as possible since YouTube doesn't like long and thorough videos. I mostly do a video with a little more background analysis and a little longer, so please check them out as well.